Good morning and welcome to the Erudite, a fortnightly discussion on contemporary issues of higher education being organized by the AP State Council of Higher Education. Today's topic is the prominence of a persistent teacher training. Persistent teacher is seen as problem solver in the classroom and also in their daily lives. Teacher persistence helps foster effective teaching. Specifically, teacher persistence may promote high expectations for students. Teacher educators might support development of teachers' persistence by emphasizing the knowledge that makes persistence of a rational response to the setbacks. For this panel discussion on this topic, the prominence of a persistent teacher training, we have with us Professor Nimrat Kaur from the School of Continuing Education and URC, Azim Premji University, Professor K. Hemachandra Reddy, Chairman, AP State Council of Higher Education, and Professor N. Venkata, Vice-Chancellor, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Srirangam. Professor Nimrat Kaur. Professor Nimrat Kaur is a part of the School of Continuing Education and University Resource Center, Azim Premji University. Professor contributes to the field research and publications teams of Azim Premji Foundation. Her doctoral degree is from Jamia Millia Islamia University, Delhi, and Professor Nimrat has designed and transacted professional development programs for education functionaries and faculty of academic support institutions of various states. She has also been a part of curriculum and material development for pre-service teacher education programs. In addition, she has contributed to the dissemination and review of policy, supported policy related initiatives taken up by states and central bodies. Professor Nimrat has contributed as a member of various committees and working groups set up by APSCHE body. Professor Nimrat Kaur. Now, may I invite you to give your remarks on the prominence of a persistent teacher training.
Good morning and thank you very much for this opportunity to share my views. At the outset, I must state that the topic under discussion is extremely relevant and critical, especially in the context of the National Education Policy 2020 that emphasizes the centrality of the teacher to effecting educational reform. The policy recognizes that at its core, formal education is the process between the teacher and the student. The teacher is most immediate to the learners, the community, and the education system. Thus, development of teacher capacity is central to good educational processes and to any kind of educational reform. So the question of what can we do to facilitate teacher development is therefore one that must be answered in depth and comprehensively. But before we address this larger question, we need to examine certain more fundamental questions. The first of this is, what do we want from our teachers? Depending on whom you ask, you may get different answers. The National Education Policy 2020 offers a concrete way to create a common vocabulary around what constitutes good teaching through the development of the National Professional Standards for Teachers, what they're calling the NPST. These standards will encompass detailed expectations of the role of the teacher at different levels of expertise or stage, that is the school stage, and the competencies required at each of these stages. These are then to be contextualized by states according to their own needs and specific requirements. The formal expectations of these, the formal articulation of these expectations through the standards would be useful not only for helping define the goals of pre-service teacher education as well as in-service teacher education, but will also serve to guide teachers and teacher educators in their work. Now that we have the way open for a formal, common understanding, shared understanding of expectations from teachers, the next question that naturally arises is, how do we facilitate the development Again, a more fundamental question arises. How does teacher development itself take place? So, the process of teacher development is an extremely complex process, which is at one level very personal, and at the other level involves the development of a professional knowledge base. This knowledge base comprises not only of an understanding of the subject, but also an understanding of how to present this subject to learners in a way in which they can engage with it and learn. This is known as the pedagogical content knowledge of a teacher. In addition to this, the teacher must also have an understanding of learners, of educational perspective, find education, of the community around the school culture itself. So it's a very vast, um, um, comprehensive variety of understanding, which altogether informs the teacher's practice. So, a student teacher, when they enter the pre-service program, they already come with certain notions of teachers and teaching because they have been a student for so many years. They have an understanding. However, as they engage with the pre-service program, they slowly begin to understand the complexity of teaching, the various facets that help them redefine their initial notions of teachers and teaching. And as the program progresses, they should slowly be able to use this understanding to try out something new and different. The pre-service program provides the safe space for students to be able to um, take on this kind of an opportunity. Joining the school with actually being in the classroom, they gain experience and become a mature teacher, and their knowledge base increases and becomes more comprehensive and deeper. However, what we need to understand is that this knowledge base cannot be the same for all teachers. It is unique and deeply personal because the experiences that help a teacher develop this base are unique and personal. At the same time, we must understand that if any of the stages of development are compromised, there is a danger that we will end up with a struggling teacher with very poor agency, who is always dependent on external factors to support her and feels helpless also at the circumstances in which he or she might be placed. So the question now we need to ask is knowing enough? And can the capacities developed during pre-service teacher education suffice for the teacher's professional life? Um, of course, the answer is very simple that the role of pre and in service teacher education both is critical, and also that we need to see both of these in a continuum. So, if we look at pre service teacher education, this is a period which not only provides inputs but also the space and time to develop professional dispositions which guide a teacher, the values, the belief systems which guide a teacher to take decisions throughout their professional life. And as I mentioned, an understanding of educational perspectives, of pedagogy, while looking at subject matter content in a new way from the perspective of the teacher. So, the recommended approach for teacher education is continuous graded practice with a strong theory practice connect. Carefully structured opportunities to observe and then perform the role of a teacher are recommended, along with opportunities for reflection on observations and experiences through sharing and dialogue to define and refine personal understanding. Along with this process goes a very deeply personal development of an identity as a teacher. Once practice as a teacher begins in school, the conceptual framework developed during pre service teacher education determines how teachers engage with their work. However, the experiences as a teacher also shape this conceptual framework. So, in a way, it's a two-way process. They come with a certain understanding which informs their work, and because of the way they approach their work, they have certain experiences which again alters this framework. So that means that during this period, continuous dialogue and intervention are necessary to support the developing practicing teacher. And this becomes more critical when we consider that the demands of everyday tasks compete with new learning and experiences every day. These experiences create, like Sir mentioned in the introduction, sometimes create a situation where you have to move away from present practice because you have certain difficulties, you face certain challenges. So, the only way you can counter this is through understanding your own experiences, through deepening your own knowledge base, and moving away from the present practice. And this is how educational reform takes place when we move away from the present practice. But at the same time, teachers need to be convinced that change is necessary and meaningful, and also how it can be brought about in their context. So, this means again that you need specific individualized dialogue and feedback rather than a generic one size fits all approach. So, in this scenario, what is the usual mode of teacher development are short term face to face programs. Now, these are seen as opportunities to acquire relatively discrete pieces of knowledge and skills which they can easily translate into practice. The expectation is that this short program will tell me something through which I will be able to help my students learn. But if we want to change in our educational processes, what is required, as I mentioned, is a change in the conceptual framework of teaching and learning in the whole knowledge base of the teacher. So, this has to be juxtaposed with the fact that everyday diverse and unique experiences are faced by the teacher every day. So, how can this dichotomy be resolved? This can be resolved only through what is the core of this discussion, that is, a persistent, sustainable teacher development process for all teachers. And this could be through various modes. It could be through in school support. It could be through um, uh, capacitating our support in structure to act at multiple levels, at the policy level, systemic levels, enhancing our own capacity, looking at different modes of professional development. The list is very long. But working on the teacher is not enough. What we need to work on is creating an ecosystem which offers persistent teacher development. And the processes through which teachers learn in this ecosystem has to be operationalized in a sustainable manner. Thus, the need for persistent teacher training. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Thanks for your insights on the continuous graded practice which is to be followed so that there will be structured training programs for the teachers to reflect upon and to experience their teaching learning process. And also you have rightly pointed out that the teacher training programs shall not be one size fits all approach. Professor K. Hemachandra Reddy, Chairman of AP State Council of Higher Education. Sir, with your teaching experience and being the administrator of the AP State Council of Higher Education, what are your perspectives on the prominence of persistent teacher training?
Thank you, Mathew. The right kind of education begins with the educator who must understand himself and free from established patterns of thought. We want such teachers to be prevalently available across the higher education institutions to handhold the students towards quality learning. Now, Nimrat rightly said we need such continuous training programs, and also her remark on one size fits all is not really correct. So, we need to seriously think about what should we bring in to prepare better teachers for tomorrow. See, ultimately the future of the entire world lies in my classroom today. The future has a potential to be good or bad. Now, it all depends on how, as a teacher, I artistically mold my students or future leaders in the class today. This is key to the future. Now, these teachers should be well informed or well trained towards the teaching learning process, because on a triangle of three corners, on one corner you have a good teacher, on the other corner you have a student who receives. The third corner, which is often ignored, is producing very good teachers. Now, producing a very good teacher requires a lot of effort from the structured effort from the government side. That is where AP State Council of Higher Education is focusing now, how to train the students to, the teachers, to become exemplary role models, thereby they sensitize, take it forward. Mark Twain wittily once said, college is a place where information from professor's lecture notes straight go into student's lecture note without entering either of the brains. Now, it cannot be such a mechanical process. Now, the whole issue lies there. Are we so mechanically connected, or should there be a symbiotic relationship where a teacher is always willing to learn and a student is always willing to share? And they said, Swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam. Now, teaching learning shall go together. Teacher shall continuously learn. Now, there are two things, like is knowledge enough? That is what Nimrat said. Knowledge is not everything. Einstein said, I am not specially talented, I am only professionally curious. So, knowledge is not everything. The curiosity in the profession, how best I can contribute, how can I really motivate a student, how can I remove the confusion in the minds of the student. This is what makes a teacher great. Now, earlier during our childhood, we have seen a lot of role models, many role models who with their mere presence influenced us. And today, if I have become a good teacher thanks to my role models, my role model teachers who influenced me. Now, today, can we produce such role models there? The whole issue, or the need for persistent training, teacher training, the whole discussion is centered around this aspect of improving the necessary qualities of a teacher continuously. I said, on one hand, you have a formally structured program, Bachelor of Education B.Ed, where those who acquire those degrees, they become teachers of elementary schools. Whereas when you come to the colleges, you do not have such mandatory requirement. Somewhere we need to embed this both pedagogy and the essential features of teaching, learning practices, and the basic qualities of a teacher somewhere in our training programs, or we should make it mandatory. That is how we are interested in, or we are trying to gather inputs from all experts. Ultimately, what we want from 80,000 teachers teaching 15.7 lakh students of AP state who are pursuing their education in 2,700 higher education institutions. We want this change to take place very immediately. The second aspect of the importance of training is, in the days of post-pandemic, pandemic has introduced us the computer tools in teaching learning process. With effortless ease, both the teacher and the student could adapt to the online teaching learning process. Now, what are the necessities when one moves towards online or blended mode? Now, what are the qualities required for a teacher to make the best use of ICT to sensitize the student? So, these are the issues that we may look forward through this discussion, or we continue to discuss to sensitize the student and the faculty members of various higher education institutions. Over to you, Mathew.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your insights about the teacher importance of the teacher training and the prominence attached to it, more particular to the teachers who are there in universities and higher educational institutions rather than the schools. Today's in the panel discussion, we also have a professor of education, and the present Vice-Chancellor of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar University, Professor N. Venkata. Sir, as a professor of education and as an administrator of university, what are your perceptions on the persistent teacher training?
Sir, good morning, especially the chairman, AP State Council of Higher Education, Professor K. Hemachandra Reddy garu, for initiating this kind of interaction programs. Usually, earlier, HRDs and in the universities, academic staff colleges were used to hold this kind of training programs for the IAS, IRS and IPS and also the teachers. Despite of their different or multiple activities, APSCHE has initiated to organize fortnightly discussions with various aspects which are related to higher education and also the other fields, for which I am very much thankful to Professor Hemachandra Reddy garu, and also I have interaction with Azim Premji University. When APSCHE sent a team to visit the Azim Premji University with regard to establishment of Teacher Education University in the state of Andhra Pradesh, for which also I am very much thankful to APSCHE. So that initiation now in the state of Andhra Pradesh led to formation of a Teacher Education University in Andhra Pradesh in a place where Ongole. So, Madam, you have shared your valuable ideas. So to begin with, a teacher who is attempting to teach without inspiring the pupil with a desire to learn is hammering on old iron. So this says that the training is very much essential, especially the continuous training on the part of the teacher. The topic today is the prominence of persistent teacher training. The title itself is very much evident, very much apt, and it focuses on the importance of the teacher and the role of the teacher and his professional commitment, development, and also concern towards the student. So really, it is a very wonderful, and the topic itself is a one way or other to enlighten the entire the teacher fraternity. So now, basically, there are two kinds of programs. You know very well, pre-service and in-service. In pre-service program also, in the state of Andhra Pradesh, the APSCHE prepared curriculum of 2-year B.Ed program in accordance with the guidelines of the NCTE 2014, wherein the practice as well as the theory, both are given equal weightage. This is the first of its kind in the country. The APSCHE has prepared 2-year B.Ed curriculum. It was entrusted to me. I was the coordinator and invited the experts across the country, nearly about 74 persons, and prepared a beautiful curriculum. Curriculum is good. Curriculum is very apt, but the curriculum transaction is not in accordance with the expectations of the curriculum preparation. As per the NEP 2020, the entire scenario is changed. Earlier, primary, upper primary, secondary, higher secondary, there are different levels of education. now from pre-primary to up to 12th come under the one fold, that is school education. So we have to prepare the suitable training programs for each level, at pre-primary level, at primary level, and at the middle school level, and the high school level, and the secondary level. So far, that is also not yet finalized by the apex body. And there is two aspects. When the changes are taking place, so it is inevitable on the part of the in-service training programs for the teachers of different levels to update their knowledge in the content as well as in the pedagogy. So here in the title itself, the prominence of persistent teacher training. Here that means continuous doing something or tries to do something in a determined but often unreasonable way. So here is the pedagogical input is ignored. So more focus on the training, rather continuous learning, rather the acquiring more knowledge or gaining more experiences. Certainly this will help the teacher. That is why there is one popular saying, if at first you don't succeed, try again. That means practice makes man perfect. Christo nastim durbhiksham. It is true, but the pedagogy is very much important, which means the nature of the child is dynamic. It is not static. So it goes on changing the nature of the child. That is where the interaction between the teacher and the taught is very much needed. And mostly the classroom, as already pointed out by our chairman, sir, classroom is an important place. That is why classroom is a place where the matured mind of the teacher and immature minds of the pupil meet, and it is not confined to the four walls. It is an interaction between the matured mind of the teacher and the immature minds of the pupil meet. So the teacher should gain knowledge, the teacher should gain experience, the teacher should update the latest trends. That is why another important aspect in this persistent training, continuing firmly in spite of difficulty or opposition. But now we are in the pandemic stage. So we are not confined to one particular style of learning or one particular mode of learning. So now formal, informal, and also non-formal ways of education, and mostly the self-study is the need of the hour. That is self-activity. There is one saying, self-activity means tell the learner as little as possible, let him discover as much as possible. We allow the child to learn through online programs, online workshops, and everything. So now it is possible on the part of the teacher as well as the student to learn more through various means of the learning processes. So this is also one area covered in this aspect. And the another important aspect is the child. Usually we are confined to the classroom structure. The pandemic forced us to move, rather shift from the classroom structure to the other online or other modes. That is why the Adams once rightly said, a system of training which does not depend upon schools and books, but upon the manipulation of the actual life of the educand entered. As long as we confine to the schools, as long as we confine to the books, there is little scope on the part of the learner to learn more and more. That also applies to the teacher. So teacher is a continuous learner. Teacher is a continuous knowledge gainer as well as knowledge giver. Then only the program, rather the students are much more benefited. Here there is two aspects we have to observe. One is the transition, the other one is the attrition. So transition means when moving the teacher from one particular cadre of post to the other cadre of the post, usually he is a new one, he is in blank. So that is why we have to keep this in mind when the teacher moving from a secondary grade level to the school assistant level, or from school assistant level to the headmaster, usually he needs some sort of inputs, both pedagogy as well as the content. And the other one is the attrition. The attrition rate is more as far as the B.Ed colleges are concerned. So that is the departure of employees from the organization. It may be industry, maybe the multinational company or in a B.Ed college. So the attrition rate is much more. Out of 40, out of 8, out of 16, only the retained staff members are 2, 3, or 4. Rest are frequently changing. So this will impact on the child's distant training. So this should be prevented. And the other one is the Andhra Pradesh, the government
Sir, maybe
has already.
Sir, Professor Venkata garu, maybe due to paucity of
So
time.
I will conclude.
Yes, sir.
I will conclude. So keeping this in mind, so pre-service should be focused in all structural aspects taken into consideration, and at the same time, the in-service program, it is continuous and constant and also updated to the knowledge on the part of the teacher. So we have to give in the preparation of the curriculum, equal weightage was given, but unfortunately, the things are changed in the entire country. So that is why the teacher education once said it is in crossroads, but now teacher education is there is no path to reach. So with these ideas and observations, I convey my sincere thanks to the chairman.
So, as you said, the teacher should be inspirational and continuous training is necessary both during in service as well as even before getting into the service. There should be sufficient training for the teachers. Now, over to Professor Nimrat Kaur. It has been observed in TSR Subramaniam committee recommendations that there should be all India education service. Now, it was proposed in the 2016 NEP draft reports, and if at all, if this recommendation is now taken into NEP 2020. Now, what will be the impact on quality of teaching in our country?
So that's an interesting question, sir. It's that recommendation has been in discourse for a very long time, but unfortunately nothing has come out of it. I think the genesis for this recommendation was that, as we all know, that education is an area which everyone is acquainted with. Everyone goes to school, everyone has children who go to school, everyone has people who, are associated with education. So there is this feeling that, there is this understanding about education which can be used to further the cause. But this actually has led to this situation where a lot of decisions have been taken which have not been informed by the entire context of education. The idea of having a set of people who are committed to understanding the educational scenario, who experience it from the beginning of their career until they are in a position to influence decisions, is something that is very important because, again, like most other things, education is something which cannot be seen in isolated pieces. If there is one aspect, if you're talking about teachers, then you must understand the entire ecosystem around teachers. Uh, for example, this whole business of contract teachers, it came about because there was this need to meet the growing demand for schooling. It was to meet the goals of universalization of education, etc. So, as an interim measure, teachers were taken in on contract, but unfortunately, that practice has continued. So, this is one example of how a narrow, focused view of one part of the education system can lead to a persistent problem, which leads to a situation where very little can be done about the matter. So, to have a dedicated set of people who understand this, who have experienced it, who have gone through it, and are in turn able to administer from this entire experience would be very, very invaluable. But as you know, the NEP 2020 has not really brought the topic up as comprehensively as the TSR Subramanian committee. So let us see what happens.
Okay, ma'am. As the chairman of AP State Council of Higher Education, what are your views about All India Education Service? And also, sir, NEP 2020 recommends mandatory training for at least 50 hours for continuous professional development. Now, how successful we will be in implementing this mandatory continuous professional development?
Yeah, I totally agree with Mathew. I totally agree with Professor Nimrat ji on All Indian Education Service as recommended by TSR Subramaniam Committee in 2016. In fact, for reasons unknown, this is not coming into the forefront, and I don't see any concrete measures going on. But as a teacher, I would definitely request an All Indian Education Service to be established to motivate the youth towards teaching. Basically, that will invite many people into the fold of teaching, many quality people into the fold of teaching. Today, you see private sector, particularly the IT enabled services are expanding at 10-20% year on year, and majority of the bright guys are moving towards it. And therefore, the people who are opting to teaching, the quality of the people who are opting to teaching voluntarily, by choice, that's coming down. So, a service like this, All Indian Education Service as recommended by TSR Subramanian Committee, is a welcome thing. Very unfortunately, I agree with Nimrat ji, nothing much has been mentioned about it in national education policy. As a second point, you said about continuous professional development. NEP is recommending 50 hours of continuous professional development to every teacher every year on an annual basis. Now, question is, what should be the content of this continuous professional development program? Now, there was a discussion earlier, either Professor Venkata said or Professor Nimrat ji said. Is it the content that makes a good teacher, or the other sterling qualities that make a good teacher? Now, what are those qualities we are looking at in a teacher? Now, Einstein said, I don't have extraordinary talents, I am only professionally curious. Now, how can we make professionally curious teachers who go on improving their knowledge and thereby expanding the horizons of the students? Swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam. Teaching, learning, they both shall go together. Teaching, learning is such a symbiotic relationship in which, teacher should always be willing to learn, and student should always be willing to share. Now, how can we really create such an environment in 2,700 higher education institutions? How can I inspire 80,000 teachers in the higher education system? Because, today one of the graduate attribute is to make him a continuous learner, lifelong learner. Now, how can we give this quality without sensitizing, without motivating, without inspiring him? So, I want those teachers who are motivators, who are enlightened personalities, who can enlighten people around them, who can enlighten the society. Now, basically the crux of the issue is the continuous professional developments or the online training programs for the teachers, what should it basically aim at? Now ultimately, to me, a student comes into the educational institution. When he enters, he carries a lot of confusions. I want those teachers who can clarify this, who can make him very confident, who can render him very confident, clear all those confusions. That's how clarity is improved. Now going forward, how can I best make use of ICT and then use these kind of training programs? TSR Subramanian committee is also talking about integrated B.Ed programs. That's on one side. B.Ed is an established learning path where those who are desirous of becoming teachers, they are always trained on the pedagogy. But I am talking about the other disciplines like engineering, pharmacy, management, computer education, like any other education where B.Ed is not mandatory, a doctorate is enough. I am drawing directly academia, student candidates from academia directly and then putting them onto service. Now, how is that these theory ridden teachers can give the practical knowledge? This is another question I have. So, see the practical knowledge or creating that curiosity to explore, experiment is one thing which is very essential of a teacher. Now, these are some of the concerns. Basically, AP State Council of Higher Education is really looking forward to the help from experts like Nimrat Kaur ji or others who are good at the teaching pedagogy, who understand the dynamic situation. How can we best make use of these emerging technologies or ever changing scenarios? Now, be it a blended mode of learning, be it a flipped classroom, or whatever people are talking about, how can I really make my teacher understand these concepts and then the benefits of these changes? Now, when the teacher himself is not clear, when the teacher himself does not have a clarity of mind, probably he is going to add further confusion in the classroom. We at AP State Council of Higher Education, we are not looking at such a scenario. I know, given a straightforward question, it is very difficult for me to change the entire scenario overnight, but I just would like to take it forward and impress upon all the teachers to understand the very fundamentals of teaching, role of a teacher, and then move forward.
So, you agree that this All India Education Service, if it is put into place, maybe it will attract more number of energetic youth into educational services. And also, as you rightly pointed out, that leaving alone the B.Ed students, maybe we have computer science, we have engineering, pharmacy faculty members who require a continuous professional development. But as you rightly pointed out, the crux of the problem is what should be the content. So, and also you said that there should be certain outcomes like creating curiosity among the student should be one of the concern or the outcome for the continuous professional development. And definitely maybe your enthusiasm to, though it is a mammoth task of revamping the teacher training programs, but still your enthusiasm and your commitment for the teacher development will take the AP State Council of Higher Education as well as the higher education sector a long way. Quickly, Professor Nimma Venkatrao garu, we have seen this, we are going through this COVID pandemic. Now, how this COVID pandemic had affected the learning environment, and what should be our the experiences, what will be for the future, how we will be coping up with such type of changes in pedagogy, maybe virtual learning, etc.
The entire system of education, the most important principle that has been neglected by the entire world is to prepare the child to receive the education. So that is very much needed, sir. The child need to be prepared to receive the education. So motivation on the part of the learner, the content, sir. But motivation, who will motivate the child? The teacher personality, the teacher quality, the teacher way of teaching, the teacher behavior, the teacher concern, the teacher style of teaching. So all the matters certainly impact on the quality as well as the learning on the part of the child, sir. So your 2 points will cover the entire syllabus. Another one also you have raised other areas. As far as the B.Ed is, pedagogy is essential, but other areas are pharmacy like engineering and they need practice, sir. So content, they need not go for any pedagogy. Pedagogy is only for the methodological approach. For example, whether to asking questions to teach the subject by way of asking questions is much more important. But how to ask the questions, either from known to unknown or from simple to complex, this is the way the pedagogy will tell us. So the teacher, to motivate the children and to draw the attention towards the instruction, the series of questions he has to pose, and the posing questions are also in a sequential manner, and the questions are also much more, all the children are trying to attempt the questions. So
Yes,
that
sir.
is why
Professor Venkata garu,
in this aspect, the other areas, the pedagogy is not that much needed, but continuous training, continuous monitoring, and updating the knowledge on the part of the pharmacy, engineering, or medicine, or such courses are very much needed. But as for the training program, B.Ed is concerned, both pedagogy and the content should be needed, sir. This is my idea to share with you, sir.
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Again, over to Professor Nimrat Kaur. Madam, how do you envisage the future of teaching learning process, maybe with this type of virtual learning, blended learning coming into practice? Now, what will be the future of teaching learning process?
Very interesting question, sir, and very loaded also, I think, because though we seem to, and although that was the only way in which we could, engage with children during the pandemic, what we have to remember is that there is a huge digital divide in our country. And because of the fact that a lot of learning happened online, a lot of our children were also deprived of the opportunity to learn. And although I'm not an expert in higher education, I assume that was the case so in higher education as well. As far as school education goes, studies have shown that something like only 20 to 25% of children were able to access online learning. And this is not just one study, but many studies. And when we look at the disadvantaged groups in our society, then within those, among children, girls were not given the chance, boys were given preference to use the smartphone, the only smartphone in the family, etc. So the future of teaching and learning, where technology is concerned, really depends on the kind of penetration and the kind of ability to access and use digital devices is made available to especially the larger proportion of children who are disadvantaged. Of course, teaching technology offers some very interesting options. But as far as I am concerned, sir, I believe truly that it can be only like what the Honorable Chairperson said, it blended, or it would be the mode to go. And I would see technology as being one of the tools. I would ideally like to see all children back in classrooms. And I would see technology as one of the tools that the teacher chooses to use as per her needs and the requirements of the subject she is teaching. So in the near future, I don't see a situation in which we can reach all our children through technology. So this is my view, sir.
Madam, this question now, how to revisit the fundamentals, where a teacher-student relationship going very firm. So this is basically, with all your experience, dealing with the subject, Is it possible, can we do something to bring back that empathy of a teacher towards a student?
So again, very important, sir. And I would say, sir, there is a lot of hope, because if we see at what has happened during the pandemic, and as you know, we work in the field and we have been part of some studies also that we've done with teachers. We have worked with teachers during the pandemic. So I think the only hope, the consistent hope that children have been reached, children from disadvantaged sections have been reached, has been because of the motivation of teachers, the empathy of teachers. Teachers who have, kept in touch with their children, who are in touch with the children of parents who have migrated to other places or gone back because they had migrated to the place where the child was studying, and now they've gone back. They've kept in touch with them over the phone, who have, as soon as it was possible, gone out into the community, engaged with children, been part of mohalla classes, organized things even before the state governments started such a thing. So I would say there is a lot of hope, sir. And I would say I would agree with the Honorable Vice-Chancellor that it is pre-service teacher education in which this empathy begins to form. So giving student teachers opportunities to observe children and then having a discussion with them on various aspects of the children's context, on their ability to learn, their experiences, is really vital to developing this understanding of children and therefore the empathy. Because all student teachers come with their own beliefs, their own notions about how children learn, which children can learn, etc. So teacher pre-service would be the time where this would be addressed. And then of course the persistent teacher training that we are talking about, that would, like very rightly said, not focus only on content and pedagogy, but also look at the additional perspectives around teaching and learning. And I really appreciate that you have given so much importance to the student-teacher relationship, because that is really a vital part of it. So I would say that the scope is that there is definite hope of having this kind of an empathy. Scope is during pre-service and persisting through the in-service programs as well.
Thank you, ma'am. So, with this panel discussion on the prominence of persistent teacher training, lot of insights have been given by experts like Professor Nimrat Kaur, Professor N. Venkata, Professor K. Hemachandra Reddy sir. So, though there is teacher training has been an age-old practice, but the persistent teacher training is getting a new shape in the changing scenario of the education with the rolling out of NEP 2020. So, I thank on behalf of the AP State Council of Higher Education, I thank and place on record our appreciations to Professor Nimrat Kaur from the School of Continuing Education and URC, Azim Premji University, to Professor N. Venkata, Vice-Chancellor, Dr. B. R. Ambedkar University, Srikakulam, and to my own chairman, Professor K. Hemachandra Reddy, for conceptualizing this particular idea of having a fortnightly discussion on contemporary issues of higher education with experts drawn from different areas, and maybe Erudite will have a long way to go and the fruits of the Erudite will be there for the future generations also. Thank you one and all.
Thank you very much.